Thanks for staying with us. You're welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Well, we're now being joined for an in-depth discussion on the real cost of living in Nigeria by Raphael Lewu, who's an investment executive, economic analyst, and group managing director of Capital Field Investment Group Limited. Good morning. Good to have you, Mr. Lewu.
Good morning.
Good to have you join us.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about cost of living in Nigeria, and of course the energy, shall we say, crisis, that a lot of people are grappling with. Two important things will be, for me, on the one hand, will be what the government of Nigeria seems to be saying very clearly. Things are getting better. I mean, the Senate President made a song of it the other time to say that things are improving. But then many Nigerians are still complaining about the fact that it is not directly, or adequately reflecting in their pockets and their earnings. The other part will be what is happening internationally. Iran, Israel, oil prices going up. What are the implications, immediate and midterm, for Nigeria at a time that this is a subject matter that Kachi is very much interested in? That Dangote is trying to further bring down the low of fuel. Will it look like Nigeria as a country will gain, but then at the end of the day, costs will be passed on to Nigerians? Again, it comes back to cost of living crisis. What are your thoughts?
Certainly, cost of living, to be honest, the crisis is still pretty much with us. And as a country, something we have to deal with, no doubt. This is fueled by inflationary pressure that we can see. Prices are soaring, energy costs, bills, even rents, transportation, and all of that we've been faced with all the crisis. Of course, like I said, inflationary pressure will usually inform this cost of living. Nigerians aren't finding it funny. And historically, as a country, we're in a position where we're not isolated, and global events will ultimately affect our cost of living. Because you talked about the oil price earlier. We're in a very dire situation. From the beginning of the year up until now, for instance, if you remember, the 2025 budget was cut on the back of $75 per barrel, whereas between January and yesterday, we've been having an average of $66, until Israel struck. Were not for the airstrike, we probably would have been talking about that same price. And of course, what that does for us is impacts our foreign reserves, and then makes it impossible for us or difficult for us to ensure stability of the currency. And budget deficit is something we have to grapple with. And of course, government's ability to fund projects becomes a challenge in that. Now, having talked about that, when these prices the oil price impacts inflation, and inflation, of course, cause things to rise. I told you about the food crisis we're facing as a nation, and then prices not being okay. Definitely, the common man won't find it easy. Government, I'm aware, is trying so much to help in this situation. But then how much has this impacted the common man? Your guess is as good as mine. Not everybody's happy. Some will argue, and I believe we probably don't even have the middle class anymore. Of course, because of the same problem we're grappling with.
You're either rich now or you're poor.
Absolutely. And so what do we talk about? People now have to design ways of taking care of themselves. Survival. Now, you ask the question, what will government do and what will people do? Maybe we should deal with what people should do first. I would say, number one, people have to realign, check themselves, and then focus more on important things or essential commodities, like people will say. You probably want to make sure you're able to eat, stay healthy, and be able to move around to do your daily businesses. And so frivolities are things people shouldn't focus on at the moment. I also encourage for people to look for other ways of earning extra income. Some people today, Nigerians, are having to take on more than one job just to make ends meet. It's tougher for those that are wage earners because not all of them can do anything about it. And so if you're able to acquire extra skills or other skills that can help you to earn extra income, is something you want to do. Focus also has to be more on investments or savings that can help you create some buffers for the hard times that we're facing at the moment. So for individuals, it's very important that the people are able to do that.
Absolutely. Now, still, sticking to energy, while, of course, we are looking at what's happening in between Israel and Iran and its effect on global oil prices, there are still other issues that affect, how communities and nations can benefit from oil produce, specifically because in a country like Nigeria, where oil seems to be our major backbone for our economy, in Canada, just at the Global Energy Summit, the OPEC Secretary General spoke about energy infrastructure, speaking about how between now and 2050, oil demand is going to continue to increase. And if energy infrastructure remains insufficient, the demand will not be able to be met. So there must be an increase in energy infrastructure. Bring this home to Nigeria. We're currently at, give or take, 1.5, 1.6 barrels of oil per day. The president has goals to increase this to, say, 2 million, possibly by 2030, 3 million barrels per day. But how can we meet up with this level of demand per day if we have insufficient energy infrastructure? How can the president begin to pay more attention to existing infrastructure, first of all, that may be dilapidated or, lacks some kind of usefulness at this time, and also focus on local investors and local capacity in improving expertise and acquisitions of new infrastructure? Yeah,
thanks. You're spot on. Your comments actually borders around energy infrastructure, which really is a big challenge for us. You talked about our projection, 2.1 million barrel per day, and we're right around 1.6 now. That's the second problem we face as a nation. We talked about oil price and the production level. Those two issues are what we're grappling with. And then, so we're talking about the production level. How do we go about this? Infrastructure. I must say to you that I've read a few comments by players in the industry about the specific moves by this government to improve that. The president himself, having a background in energy, I'm aware executive orders, 1 or 2, if not more. The essay to the president on this is said, I belong to a group, energy lawyers and practitioners, and a lot is going on there. I know recently some rounds of bids were put out there for people to come and acquire some other assets that haven't been doing much. The government introduced a fund recently that will allow for people to come in and play. And then the reason and the objective behind this, obviously, is for them to be able to come in, play, and then help with the production level. So that would be. So I understand that they understand as well that energy infrastructure is very critical. Now, the funding that you require for this, it is key. Policies have to come up to encourage this as much as possible. It's not just about the policies. The government must, as much as they're doing that, implement this and then create the enabling environment for players in the industry to come out and then invest in this area. Investors out there must also be encouraged. You know what I mean? Tax incentives have to be encouraged so that people can come in and invest. And then the objectives, particularly the objective of increasing production, can also be met.
Thank you. Now, I feel we should move a little bit away from energy and let's move into other sectors of the economy. I think energy and oil and gas is one of the sectors where the money stays in a few hands. Ultimately, there's no trickle down, right? And we're talking about an economy and a country where most people are poor and or just trying to survive and get by. Now, of course, we are focusing on oil and gas because that is what funds our economy, but it's also a very small part of our GDP. It's a very odd relationship we have with oil and gas in Nigeria.
That's right.
But with this $5.7 billion shortfall we're seeing in our budget, all things considered, Iran and Israel on one side, we have to figure out our non-oil sector.
Yeah.
And I want us to talk a little bit about agriculture in Nigeria, because sometimes it seems like it's used as a buzzword, but I think our biggest non-oil export is from agriculture. When we're talking about this, especially considering we're in rainy season now, we're seeing an uptick of flooding and evacuations, right? We've talked about infrastructure. We have poor infrastructure in our agricultural sector. So when we're talking about trying to reduce food inflation, which is the highest pressure we have when it comes to inflation, our inflationary pressure in this country, do you believe that the private sector has a role to play here, especially to absorb these shocks? And do you believe that there is anything that can be done to get us out of this rut we are currently in? As the president said, he's making agriculture sexy. Do you agree?
Yes, you're right. I'll take it from the point of the need for us to pay more attention on the non-oil export earnings and also revenue generation. Currently, oil accounts for 80% of our I think export earnings, and a substantial part of our revenue generation, which isn't okay at all. Successive governments have always come to mouth the need for us to pay attention to non-oil revenue earners. Agric, like you said, it's before oil, that was, and we have history of the Kano pyramid, cocoa, rubber, different regions. They were doing very well. And then we haven't done much about it. We need to pay a lot of attention for various reasons, not only for the food security part of it, but that's revenue generation. We need to also take steps to show that we are ready to go for it. Number one, so much technology has gone into agric. And agri-finance is what people are also talking about. And so if we all have the concerted efforts to pay attention to this, it will help. Yes, the president has said, he wants to make agri sexy. What are we doing about it? What are the incentives the government will do? What policies are we seeing? And what steps are they taking to implement the policies? Talking about the point of funding, for instance, you must begin to look for single-digit interest rates to encourage farmers and people to come into that space. You can't, at the current level of interest rates, encourage anyone to go. There's just no way it's going to be straight loss. One key thing, besides just farming, processing is one thing. If you look at the scale of the international trade, those that process the end produces are the ones that make the most of the money. You find out Nigeria and other African countries will grow these crops or commodities, and they get pittance, nothing for it. But those that will now take cocoa, for instance, and with the pods, how much do you get over there? Then when you translate this to chocolates, sell it back to us, and you make so much money. So we need to invest a lot in processing and technology that will help us earn as much as we should to get this done.
All right. It's now the third year of the president.
Yes.
Many people will say that it looks like politics has come early before the elections of 2027. But then if we have to appraise the president at the federal government level on what the government is saying, what were your takeaways from the barrage of information that were put out on May 29th to mark the second anniversary, and particularly on June 12th, that is now celebrated as Democracy Day? What would be your key takeaway that you think that this is the area that government is getting right? And then what three key things will you outline for the government to focus on in this third year, given that by this time next year, it will be more of politics than governance? What will be your advice?
Thank you. The first thing to me will be the economy. The FX regime before now was in shambles. I think I don't know if it was here or some other station that I had to discuss this. This government came and was faced with so much troubles, instability in the foreign exchange market. relatively today, I think things are stable. We're not there yet. The levels we are today, 1,500 and something, it was a lot more than that before. Some will tell you, what was it before this government came into power?
Yes, they will.
Yeah, so you can do that comparative analysis.
Yeah, but what do you think the true value of Naira will be?
World
Give and
Bank
take.
will say to you, I actually don't think it should be above 1,000. It shouldn't be. Prices that we had before, the rates we had before weren't realistic, to be honest. But the thing I think people don't get really is, why do you really have to devalue? And I think the communication isn't there. Discussion should be around the need for you to, if governments, serious government devalue the currency just to encourage the people to focus on local things.
Yeah.
So you can also drive, exactly.
Yeah.
But then conversations are not around that. People just say to you, devaluation, devaluation. Why should that be? Some would tell you, look, China did it and they succeeded. But the facts are not the same. You know, the leaders must show that, look, if you do this, these are the things we need to. You must leave it and then let the people follow. So that's much about the currency. Now, infrastructure is very key. The second thing I think this government should do, really pay more attention to that. Because that's what will galvanize the economy and then make things work. If the roads are not there, some will say to you, we have the coastal road. Is that your priority as a government? Well, there are benefits to that coastal road. But then the inward or the inland roads, those internal ones as well, have to be. If you have to take from Abuja to the southern part of the country, that road, something has to be done about that. The major national roads have to be fixed. So goods and commodities can actually move around, and then that would promote trade in the place. For me, education is priceless. How much of our budget are we allocating to education? What about health? These are things, to my mind, the government must focus on. And we must find results. If the government does not begin to, the president does not begin to hold the ministers and those that are responsible accountable for those things, we must see things so they know they expect changes to happen or they get fired. You don't do what they're supposed to do. And the people have to be told what to expect. It's been said to be, is it change? What's the mantra for the government, the APC government?
Renewed hope.
Renewed hope. We must be told when this hope will be renewed. How long are we going to be on this for? You know what I mean? And so people can, wire themselves to know when to expect this will be. And those that are leaders should live the lifestyle that others can follow. You can say to us, yes, renewed hope, and then we should sacrifice, and then the leaders are not sacrificing.
Be patient.
No, you have
sacrifice.
So the communication has to be there. I can see they're doing things, but I think they need to talk to us more about what they're doing.
But as an economist, obviously you know that there are issues, for instance, subsidy removal, floating the Naira. There was no shock absorber for these decisions to start with.
That's right.
And as a result of not having any shock absorber for these decisions, the effect was immediate on Nigerians. And it was grappling, it was like, oh my goodness, what's going on? That's why it's so intense right now for a lot of Nigerians. It's tough, it's very, very tough. But is there, again, renewed hope on the horizon, based off of what you have seen, based off the investments that you have seen, the priorities? We've seen a lot of commissioning of projects, for instance. We just spoke about the ICC in Abuja. I was stunned to hear $34 million for the ICC. About $25 million.
39 billion.
39 billion naira. 39 billion.
Yeah.
39 billion naira to renovate the International Conference Center in Abuja, as well as numerous projects going on across states, from Akwa Ibom State to here in Lagos State. So many projects are ongoing. The president in his speech also spoke about, several funds going. That is, it is, in the future, is going. It has not gone yet. It's still going into education, into health, into job creation. So what's your assessment of all of these things? Are we jumping the gun? Are we focusing on priorities, considering that when he came in, there was swift, remove the subsidy, floats the Naira. But the investments, on the other hand, are in infrastructure. Is there a misplaced priority issue here?
Okay, so I don't know what to say if the jury is still out as to whether or not Absolutely. I think clearly, really, I'm not sure we were prepared for the twin effect of the reforms that we're having.
Yeah.
So clearly, we should have been prepared for it. But of course, it's happened, and I guess we've come to accept it. Talking about priorities, I personally do think that government has shown clearly areas they need to invest and then put so much allocation of resources to help cushion the effects of those reforms. Implementation, to my mind, will be a problem. And that's why I talked about the review mechanism the government has put in place to see whether or not what they are doing are actually impacting on the people. Are we really getting the benefits of what will be? Some had said, look, when they began to give out those to people as palliatives during the period, some will say to you, listen, shouldn't you have allocated that fund to things that will help generate employment and let people drive their businesses and all? But I think really when you have things like this, there will be like 3 levels: the immediate impact, mid-term, and the long-term part of it. Now, if you put the cart before the horse, your guess is as good as mine. Attention must be placed on things that will help alleviate the suffering of the people immediately, and then we look at the mid-term and then the long-term part of it. And the resource allocation, of course, will be in that order. And so really, if it's not done the way it should be, you won't get the results we expect. And that's why, whereas the government is saying they're doing so much of this, the people are saying they can't find or they can't see the results in their life.
Definitely. I think what you said there is very important, is that we need to see the results of what they're doing, and also that we need to focus on what will actually move people's lives forward. But it seems we would not have anyone who give out anything they can't put their names on. The president's name is on the ICC and on the Senate library building, the National Assembly library building, but all the way down to legislators and local government chairmen. We're seeing work that is being done with public funds, with Nigerian funds, and people are slapping their faces and their names on it. From the bag of rice to, it can even be a pepper grinder at this point in time. They will put their name and they'll put their face. But as you said, these are handouts. They do not actually equal development.
Right.
So, you know, Nigeria exists in a global world. And now we've spoken about how first the tariff fights between China and America affected oil prices and they dropped. Now it seems that Iran and Israel agitations might lead to an increase in the oil price. But something else that we've seen in last week is China saying that they're dropping all their tariffs on African countries except for one, Eswatini, because they recognize Taiwan. So that's very unique. But what else do you think we're going to see in this geopolitical space that we're entering? Because it seems it's a whole new world that we're in. That do you feel that it might affect Nigeria? Do you think we're being left behind a little bit? Because, you know, especially with AI, we're still fighting to have light. I saw a picture of one of the Iranian generals that was killed, and there was a picture of his home that was blown up, and somebody commented, wow, they still have lights. so, you know, just to understand how far back Nigeria might feel. So, you know, if we're looking at this current geopolitical space, is Nigeria being left behind?
All right, so I mentioned earlier that we are not isolated from the world, and geopolitical events naturally will impact, and then we'll feel. Let me add to what you said, the points you mentioned. The President Donald Trump's comment, drill, baby, drill. So even before the trade war began, drilling of shale oil began to impact because, of course, it increased supply. And of course, you know what the impact will be on pricing. That's one point that will add to the geopolitical issues or events we're talking about. Not to talk of, or not forgetting the Russia-Ukraine war, the supply chain disruption that has led to, and of course, the impact on Nigeria. For me, when things like this happen, I always say, look, take advantage of the opportunities that will be. When countries come up with things and you're not talked about, it just says to you as a nation, look inward. Where are your options? What are the things you need to do? The first thing for me is Africans as a continent. The African countries should begin to look inward and to trade more amongst themselves. Because there we can get value, we understand ourselves, the cultures are similar, and there are things we can do to take advantage of that. Are we being left behind? Naturally, they never cared about us. So we must begin to look out for ourselves.
Yeah.
Then what do? Look at those trade terms. There is nothing, it's no rocket science. They are usually skewed in favor of the other people. And then we must begin to look at ways we must extract value from those agreements. And so what do? Look inwards. What are the things you need to do? Must I move my things to the US or China or anywhere? There are other countries that are probably ready to discuss trade terms that are more favorable. And those are the people we should be looking at.
Absolutely. All right, Raphael, we want to thank you for the insight that you've brought to the table this morning, sharing with us your deep perspectives. We want to thank you. Indeed.
Thank you so much. As usual, I mean, it's always a pleasure.
Absolutely. And of course, you'll be welcome any other time.
Thank you.